Wow, what a year and a half it's been. Let's face it. After coronavirus and wearing a mask and not wearing a mask and all that came with that, the world is finally reopening and many of us were left, well, let's say with a pain in our back. Well, we know someone who makes getting aligned a snap. Well, it's more like a snap and a crack. SnapCrack offers hassle-free chiropractic adjustments for just $29 a visit. No hidden fees and no appointment needed. Just walk in and reap the benefits of their 3-step process of the crack, the drop, and the click. Trust us, good things come in threes. Their clinics even offer monthly memberships for $49 that include adjustments and Snap Boost, which is a vitamin therapy injection. Vas a salir nuevo de paquete. So visit snapcrack.com today to find the location nearest you and just stop by. You'll be in and out before you know it. And after all, when you feel better, you do better. Hey people, this is DJ.
And this is Ish. And this is Season 4 of Pero Let Me Tell You. I know, so thank God, because if we were going to be very lackadaisical, like the Day of the Presidents, we would both fall asleep.
What Day of the Presidents?
That you just started talking about the presidents.
Oh, yeah, but it was like 3 a.m.
Right, but I'm saying if we were to have a recap of that after the meal we just had from Eating House, rest in peace.
Well, I was going to say happy birthday. Welcome, everyone, to Pero Let Me Tell You, episode
165.
165. How is everybody? We made it to the end of the week, and what a week it's been.
I mean, has it? Did something happen?
Before we get to the issues of this week.
Anything?
Yes, as you said, Eating House here, well, in the Gables,
yes,
is closing Sunday, right?
On Sunday, yeah, July 18th.
And I'm
going to miss it, but my waistline will be thanking me.
Right. So Ish and I had one final dinner at one last supper.
Oh, a last supper?
At Eating House. And we were telling the waitress there that the fact that they're closing down and depriving the general public of the pasta carbonara is like...
It's a crime against nature.
It's a crime against humanity because
it really is.
The pasta carbonara there is in my top 10 favorite things I've ever eaten in my life. So, Eating House, thanks for the memories.
Yes, gone but not forgotten.
So
them and the Dewey Decimal System.
So here we're talking about very first world problems.
Well, speaking of crimes against humanity,
we're talking about very first world problems. So, what has been going on this week? It's been a bit of a.
Was it like 88 miles from us?
Sort of.
88 and a half? What is it? Sort of.
So there may have been a thing or two that happened in Cuba that we're probably going to be discussing for most of the show.
So strap in, ladies and gentlemen.
Strap in. So first off, we want to say actually a big thank you. We've posted a lot of content this week, obviously regarding Cuba, and not just us. Everybody online has posted stuff, and we've gotten a lot of feedback and a lot of comments and a lot of views and likes and impressions and all that fun stuff. So thank you very much, everybody who listens to us, that has come to our page, that is listening to our podcast. You know, at the end of the day,
a lot of first timers probably for this episode.
Yeah. At the end of the day, you know, we've been doing this podcast for a few years now, and, you know, our motto is listen, laugh, and learn. But at the end of the day, it's about having conversations and dialogue. And, you know, we like to have fun and kid around, but sometimes things are serious.
Well, there's a reason listen is first in that list.
Yes. And listen was a whole spiel of my
of your post
of my post
this
week that sort of went viral. You could say that we went viral this week.
We kind of went maybe not like COVID viral, but like a cold viral.
Oh, I just got that. I'm like, what went viral during COVID? So let's get right to it.
Let's do it.
So obviously, we don't really need to say much. This week, there have been protests in Cuba.
Well, let's take a step back, I think, because let's not assume that everybody knows what happened and why it happened, right? Like, I'm saying
to people that listen to Pero Let Me Tell You.
Well, you know, you never want to assume, right? You always want to at least give a little bit of background, right?
Okay, I mean, it's not like this is a podcast about knitting, but we'll give a bit of a background. So this week in Cuba, I believe it was Tuesday,
It was July 11th.
protests started. And people started protesting, and at first, like, it was in Matanzas, and then Camagüey, and then, online we kept hearing about in this place and in that place, and in Santiago, and in Orient, like in different parts of Cuba.
It wasn't just one city.
And like the internet, like Cuban Twitter and Cuban, Cuban
Insta, yeah.
Well, the Insta, yeah.
Oh, for sure.
There's a black Twitter. I'm like, if there's a black Twitter, there's a Cuban Twitter.
Yeah,
like,
absolutely.
Was like blowing up. Blowing up would be an understatement.
Yeah.
Cuba was trending number one for
Probably still is.
for like 2 days. It was a top trending hashtag SOS Cuba on Twitter, which I don't think that's ever happened, or any Cuba related matter has
Probably
ever
not. Maybe
done that.
Maybe when Castro died.
And you start hearing things, you don't know what's real, what's not.
We've had these false alarms before.
But the point is, and then there was a lot of footages. The point is that there was a lot of footage showing an uprising of people that have had enough. And we don't need to tell you guys that this is unprecedented in Cuba. I mean, whatever few protests have occurred during the regime of the last 62 years have been few and far in between. So this was huge, and the fact that it was happening.
I can't remember a protest.
In 1994, there was one.
But not to this magnitude.
I don't know about to this magnitude, but it got pretty bad in Havana.
But in Havana.
And that's what a lot of people think led to Guantanamo.
Oh, okay.
And the government really interjected and abused and beat the shit out of people in 94. And then
much like they're doing in 2021.
And then you see like the Dama de Blanco and things like that. So there's been things here and there, but never like this widespread thing about the island, throughout the island. I mean, and anything with Cuba is something that as Cubans we take obviously very personally.
Yeah, it's
so
charged.
we're very quick to be like, no, you got it wrong, and no, that's not what it is.
Right.
And the sort of kind of initial messaging was that people were protesting because of COVID.
Yeah, that was what was started.
Right,
because that was the party
for
line.
quite some time now, I've been hearing my parents do WhatsApp calls with a couple of relatives and friends they have left.
Oh, so you do still have some people on the island?
We do and we do and we don't. I always say my parents were the last people to get here, and it was been 41 years.
Yeah, so
what my parents have left is what a lot of people have left: primos segundos o tercero, or like people that were like family, but they're not family.
right.
Like
también because they left later in life, it was people that they'd known for 30 years.
Yeah,
not
my parents left in their early 30s. We've never, like, my parents were the last ones here.
Right.
Like, we don't have any immediate.
They closed
family.
the door. Yeah.
We don't have any immediate family.
No, you're all here. Yeah.
Thankfully. And but they do, like, my mom has like a second cousin that she's kind of close to, and her and my aunt are always WhatsApping and video and all that. So we've known for quite some time the issues that were happening there because of COVID. People, my parents are from a very, very small town in Matanzas called Calor Roja, like population high school stadium, like high school gym. Like,
that's just after your family left, they were down 100 people.
Yes.
and it was noticeable.
There's like, I make this joke a lot of times that, remember my cousins that came from Cuba, again, they're like second, third cousins, but that came from Cuba 5-6 years ago.
Most recent,
Yeah, that I tell you, her grandmother is related to my dad, and her grandfather is related to my mom. And you're like, but what are the chances of that happening? And I'm like, that's what happens when you grow up in a town that has like 2,000 people. Like,
eventually you run out of people.
You run out of people.
Like, yeah.
I think now they're up to like 5,000. Got to rock Cuba.
Ooh, metropolis.
Anyway, they don't have enough people to fill up like a civic auditorium. Like,
they don't have enough people, I think, to fill up the Southwest Auditorium.
Yeah. Anyway, but we had been hearing that for a long time, that there were people like dropping like flies because of COVID, and the hospitals, not that the hospitals there are ever like great, but like really big issues.
Yeah, no, I had heard that, like, because the lady who takes care of my grandmother, she has all her family there. Actually, literally, like, except for her kids, all her sisters and siblings are still there. And my mom was telling me that she had said on one of her sisters, I think, blocks, like, somebody had COVID, or there were like two people that had COVID or something like that. they didn't quarantine that house. They quarantined the block.
Yeah.
The block. Okay. So it was like, oh, you're perfectly fine and healthy. Well, guess what? Sucks to be you because you live on the COVID block and now you're all stuck inside your house.
Right. It had gotten like really, really bad. And we had been hearing about this for quite some time. So this wasn't anything new. And I mean, obviously, nobody thought that it was going to end in what it ended,
in a protest,
in protest. But it's good that in having this discussion, it's very clear that people are protesting. I mean, the COVID was certainly a catalyst.
Eso fue la tapa
it was la tapa pomo.
La
Yeah,
tapa
la tapa
pomo,
pomo. But they're not protesting because, oh, we don't have proper medical care.
They're not chanting, like Ana Navarro said, they're not running through the streets yelling vacuna.
Yeah.
They're yelling libertad.
Right. So let's get that out of the way. Although again, I sense that usually people that would probably listen to us
Right.
Know what's up. So yeah, we've seen this widespread protests in Cuba and people that have had enough. So obviously everybody's asking, so what now?
I just thought of the Claire Huxtable there. She's like, and now rage.
Yeah, rage. So what's your take on it? Like, what do you think?
It's, you know what? I feel like I want to have more feelings than I do, but I feel like growing up in this environment where we've had so many quote unquote false alarms, I almost don't want to get excited.
Really haven't.
No, but you hear all these like, and again, when I say false alarms, maybe that's not the right term, but you know, when again, pie in the sky thinking, but like when Fidel died, right? Like people erroneously or wishfully, you know, were like, oh my God, he's dead. Finally, he's dead. Something's gonna happen.
I didn't think something was gonna happen.
But Darían, not you, but I'm saying like, and nothing happened. You know, when people, you know, when you hear about like, oh, there's this, you know, this protest, La Tama de Blanco, oh, they're bringing attention to the island, and nothing happens. Like you live in this almost state of constant just being let down. And I think a lot of it is, a big part of it is, for me, I feel like people just don't care.
You mean people in the U.S.?
None. I'm gonna say non-Cubans, maybe non-Latinos, because I feel like some Venezuelans feel this.
No.
I think
Well, I'm glad you mentioned that. I think a lot of Latin people feel the problem with Cuba because remember,
it's similar to their countries.
There's so many countries in Latin America that have, you know, maybe they don't have communism, but I mean, things are just as bad.
The corruption is as bad.
I mean,
so, I mean, I'm sure un Nicaragüense feels it. Un Colombiano feels it.
Like
hello, Colombia the other day.
Right. Living in Honduras, like, you know, with the what is it? NS?
The NS-13.
Right. After you're not thinking like, well, you know, at least I'm not a communist country. Well,
right.
No, I mean, it's like you're living in hell. Like, so that's why I think that a lot of Latin American countries sympathize with one another when it comes down to this, because they're countries that either have, in the case of Cuba, a communist regime, or countries that technically aren't communist, but they have such corrupt governments.
They might as well be.
They might as well be communist because it's like,
pa lo que falta.
Yeah, there's like practically no difference in the sense. But look, we've had this conversation here a lot of times. I mean, I can't imagine how many episodes I've said this in. When I moved to Michigan, you know, some years back, I was just kind of shocked how there are people who had no idea there was communism in Cuba. And you're talking about people that were in law school. That, you know, again, not that you have to be brilliant to be a lawyer, but to go to law school.
You've gone to school.
But, you know, you're not also like illiterate.
Right.
Who had no idea. That just thought Cuba was just another poor country in the Caribbean or in Latin America. And they had like no idea. They had no idea of like
history.
That it was a communist country, you know, let alone of its history, the Montreal boat lift, you know, that people have come, you know, let alone Peter Pan, you know, like you know, because a lot of people just don't care. It doesn't interest them. They're like, Cuba, what, we have tacos? Like what? Like, you know, completely they don't care because, you know, they just see everybody that speaks Spanish as a monolith, and it's unfortunate. But the problem, the main issue with Cuba in terms of American policy, on top of that, again, it's not a priority for the United States.
There's nothing there.
Is that a lot of people here are talking about like invasion, like go and like it's like okay, how are you going to pull that up? Off?
Right. Like what? You're just going to show up with like the Navy?
Right. If no other president in the past has done it, it's for a reason.
Well,
right?
number one, you can't just show up and invade a country without being provoked.
Right.
Because then you're a bully at that point.
And then like what do you do? Like what are you supposed to do? That's why like the US policy, if you will, against Cuba is very tricky because while you have hundreds of thousands of Cuban Americans, if not millions, in the US that obviously want the regime down, how do you, as the president or the government, how do you respond to that? You can't respond by a military intervention because you know what happens after a military intervention?
You gotta figure it out.
An occupation.
Right. Now
Right?
you have to figure out.
So what is the
the
United
country.
States going to do? Are they going to go to Cuba and like wipe out the government and then what? Go home? Like,
Right.
I mean,
right.
what? Who stays? Like, who's the government? Who's
Right.
Right. I mean, and people are still talking about the invasion of Iraq and the occupation of Iraq and how we shouldn't have done that and everything that stemmed down from that. So what? Are you just going to go invade another country? Like, I understand that we have a bias towards that and we have an emotional connection to that, but it's not that simple.
There's a stark reality.
But I do think there's things the United States can do.
Such as what?
So I think that the United States, because
I genuinely have no clue.
Okay, but think about it in the past, starting with celebrities.
Okay.
Darfur. People probably had never heard Darfur before.
I didn't know about Darfur until somebody started a hashtag.
The early 2000s, like 2004, 2005, I'll never forget que este chiquito from the Notebook, Ryan
Gosling.
He wore a shirt that was like Save Darfur. And then, different celebrities were like, Save Darfur.
Right.
Because of,
it was the cause du jour.
Things that are going on in Darfur. It's like, okay, so you mean to tell me that all these celebrities, and not that I'm against that cause, I hope that whatever issues were going on in Darfur
are okay. Right.
But it's like, so these celebrities just decided to get together and pick this cause of this
for
nation
random
that nobody knows about, or like when you see people save Tibet,
Right.
And I love me some Tibet. Like I want to go spend, I don't know about 7 years in Tibet, but
and Richard Gere.
But I would love to go there, and it's a country that we don't have to get into the history of Tibet, but it's pretty much sort of held hostage by China.
Yeah.
Right. Did your parents go to Tibet?
They did.
Yeah. And I remember when people were like, "Save Tibet," and it's like, okay, so that's why I tweeted about something about this earlier this week, or like when the United States, and when I mean the United States, I mean the public consciousness.
So you're saying like the fact that we do have hashtag SOS Cuba.
Right, but what I'm saying is a public consciousness. Like, for example, a couple of years ago in like Afghanistan and like in Syria, I posted on my personal Instagram pictures and things from Syria that have broken my heart, that like I have cried over.
Right.
And I'm not saying not to give, listen very carefully. I'm not saying not to give the attention that those countries deserve in terms of the human rights violations that occur there.
Yeah, this isn't pie.
They deserve all the attention in the world.
But you can give attention to multiple things.
To what is going on there, for people to know whether it's genocide, war, abuse, human rights violations, so people can know. But I feel that does not happen with Cuba.
Do you
and I tweeted about that earlier this week, and it sort of blew up on my Twitter feed. It's just, and I hate to sound like an old Cuban man, but, like my parents or grandparents, but, Cuba has one of the worst human rights record.
And history.
Right. People see what goes on there. It's a communist country, bad human rights record. Right. People are disappeared. People disappear. People are executed.
Right.
This is not
It's not new. Debate, and this is not something that just started happening.
Why is it that nobody ever in the general American populace, why nobody ever talks about the injustices of Cuba? Like, that's something that has always, I've kind of been curious on that.
So can I, and I'm about to go into like maybe conspiracy theory mode, so forgive me ahead of time. Obviously, the biggest thing is, getting attention from news outlets, right? And as we know, the furthest south that news outlets go is Mexico. Or if there's a hurricane in Puerto Rico, they'll go throw somebody there and be like, and now Elsa's battening our hatches. Do you think that, for better or worse, there is, because most Cubans, and again, this is me going down a rabbit hole, the loudest Cubans in this country tend to be conservative, alt-righty, things like that. Do you think that, unfortunately, our community has been painted with a brush of
No, I don't think
they... No? Okay.
No, I don't think it's that because...
You know where I was going with this,
yes,
right?
the whole thing about Cubans being ultra-conservative, and specifically, you could say it, voting for Trump.
Well, but that's not. But that's now. I'm talking about for always.
Right,
I'm talking about for always.
Cubans have always been conservative and Republican, but some years back we didn't have this kind of like at your throat kind of division between the two parties and the two ideologies.
Right.
So while Cubans generally tend to be more conservative, more Republican, have gone with Republican presidents or Republican nominees or elected politicians to Congress. It wasn't like this, and again,
because to your point, I don't understand why nobody ever
I don't understand.
cares.
Let's
put it bluntly. Why nobody
cares? I think it's part also of how the general American populace just doesn't care about Latin America.
Well, that's true too. That's true too.
And I think that Cuba falls in that category. They just really don't care generally about Latin America. I mean, again, we've talked about it here in this podcast.
Most people don't know that Puerto Rico is part of the U.S.
How many Americans did not know that Puerto Rico was American?
Yeah.
No clue. No clue. And I think that generally, again, the American populace just doesn't give a rat's ass about what's going on in Latin America. They care about what's going on the other side of the world. And again, I'm not saying that you should
don't stop caring.
When you see an injustice,
you should care.
You should care, no matter where it's from and no matter who is involved. You should care. But it just, again, I've never understood how the United States has gotten involved, has had opinions,
everything.
In both the government and in both the general populace, in terms of other tragedies and other issues in other places, but not in Cuba, which is 90 miles away from the U.S. That just doesn't, it blows my mind. It blows my mind. And when you hear people say this, it's a true criticism.
Como yo digo, si los Estados Unidos didn't get involved in Venezuela, and Venezuela has oil, they're not going to get involved in Cuba. For what, Rom?
But they get involved when they want, because look...
No, pero por eso I'm agreeing with you. I'm like, if they didn't get involved in a country that has, resources, they're not going to get involved in Cuba.
In Panama to General Noriega.
Yeah, but they had the canal. That's a resource for them.
Well, maybe, but
that's a resource. That's why they
found a way of removing that man from power, and because
the canal
is a
resource.
On drug trafficking.
I think so. Yeah,
some drug related trafficking, and that was very we're gonna get you, bitch.
Right, but that's a waterway that controls trade.
Right. Whether it's because they have no interest in Cuba or whatever, I don't know, but. And again, this is not even the government. Again, the general populace just doesn't care. They don't care. They'll wear their little trendy T-shirts about Save Tibet and all this stuff. But no freaking celebrity has ever said, there's human rights violation in Cuba.
Right. No. Instead, we get Jay-Z, Beyonce, and Sean Penn.
Right. But you know what? I don't even criticize them going to Cuba.
No, but I criticize Sean Penn for all the mad house of shit that he talks.
Oh, bueno, no, él sí. Es como dice mi papá, era un perro comunista.
Yeah.
Jay-Z and Beyonce going to Cuba, whatever. I don't get mad at that. Madonna went to Cuba. A bunch of celebrities have gone to Cuba. I don't get mad at that because I see it as something similar as if we went to China,
Right. But again,
the Canadians love Cuba.
That's true. Australians too.
Yeah, they love Cuba. So I don't know. I don't know. And another thing that, and this is the episode of Pero Let Me Tell You, that's going to be all Cuba.
All the time. We are the new Radio Mambi.
Please don't say that again. Is the other thing that I also tweeted about earlier this week that sort of went viral was when I said,
Te voy a dar una vacuna, you've gone too viral.
The comments that I already saw online. I think you've seen them too, of people like, oh my God, go to Cuba before it becomes westernized and capitalist country.
Oh, we have talked about that many times on this show.
Every time there's a little hiccup in Cuba, people say that, right? Oh, go before,
before it's ruined.
A McDonald's and Starbucks. And it's like,
fuck you.
It's like, fuck you. It's
fuck
like,
you.
The
suffering of my people is not your poverty porn.
It's not your amusement park.
Okay, poverty. If you know what, you want to go see a place that has people suffering, that has people living below the poverty line, that has people struggling to make ends meet. You don't have to go and get a special, visa to go to Cuba. You can go to Flint, Michigan.
Yeah, and it's
go to Flint, Michigan.
It's such a, you know what? It's such
go to Sarajevo.
It's such an entitled, privileged point of view, and I'm going to tell you why.
I just want to punch him in the fucking face.
The first time I ever went to Budapest was in 1999. I was 2. Was in 1999, and Budapest was in Hungary. It was part of the Soviet bloc, right? And when we went, those people hadn't, they used to be a communist.
Sí, estaban recién.
Right.
Yeah.
It had been less than 10 years since democracy and capitalism had, been like
arrived, shall we say,
in that country. So there was still a lot of work to be done at that time. Right. But I remember that there were already like McDonald's and, national banks and stuff like that. And I remember like me and my parents talking, again, I was 2, so I was very advanced.
Yes. You were like boss baby.
Yes. Exactly. I remember talking about like, how great it is, right? How great it is that these people that have been through hell and back, now they could enjoy something as simple and rudimentary
if they felt
as
like
a freaking Big Mac.
If they felt like
or a Mac Royal, as it's called in Europe. The Big Mac.
That's right.
The Quarter Pounder, I'm sorry.
Yeah. The Royale. Yeah.
Doesn't that blow your mind?
That it's a Royale.
It's a Royale because it's a Quarter Pounder because we use a metric system. We don't use a metric system. And the rest of the world doesn't use pound. You didn't know that?
Oh, wait.
Okay.
No, wait a minute. It just hit me.
The quarter
I never stopped to think about it.
It's called the Quarter Pounder because it's a quarter
of a pound.
Right?
But the rest of the world
doesn't use pounds.
So you can't have like a quarter. You can't have like a quarter kilogram. Right.
Yeah. The quarter kilo.
Quarter kilo. Yeah. It
I guess a quarter kilo can be a thing. I'm gonna have a quarter kilo with extra onions and cheese. That's why it's called the Mac Royale. You didn't know that?
I didn't know that was the reason.
Yeah.
No, because you know how like Burger King in Australia is called Hungry Jack? Yeah. I just thought it was just a different name.
It's funny because when I went to Australia and I saw the Hungry Jack sign, I'm like, but it's the same font as Burger King.
Listen, in Michigan there's a Papiano's.
Yes.
Because
and I'm all about the font.
Right. So I don't question these things anymore.
But getting back to it, I remember that we were so happy for them. So happy. And then I'm thinking and here comes the freaking entitled, privileged, average American that it's like, oh no, you're
Shut
living
up,
in
Jackson and Marjorie.
You're living in poverty and then you don't have anything to eat, but that's so exotic to us. It's like, pero ¿quién te cree que tú eres?
I want to punch them in the face.
I do.
I genuinely do. Bueno, when I was living in New York was when, Obama had gone to Cuba and everybody, I got that question so many times.
What do you think about Obama going to
Cuba? Oh, well, now that things are different, are you going to go? And, and what do you think? And I would hear things like, oh, but before they put all these, and I tried to be nice at first.
Right.
And then eventually I just got to the point where I was just like, you know what? I'd rather not have this conversation. Because a lot of people who were asking me those questions, they weren't friends. If Rick and Joe had to, I'd be like, you know what, fuck them, and blah, 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 blah. But it was coworkers and shit. And I got to the point where I was just like, I really would rather not have this conversation because I'm gonna say something that's gonna wind up being we're gonna wind up in HR.
We don't want that.
We don't want that.
But it's just that's why I always try to see the Cuban
angle.
Well, no, I try to see Cuban matters not from a Cuban angle.
Oh, okay.
Right?
Objectively.
Of course, objectively and unbiased, because there's a lot of things I disagree with our people,
just a smidge,
a lot, and I'm very, very vocal about. But the whole thing about how people talk about oh, there's free healthcare and free education. I'm like. What do you right? Have you seen that? Mira, healthcare is something that you have good healthcare if you have money. And when I mean money, I mean if the institutions have money. Like,
right, the resources.
Right, because what is healthcare? Healthcare science. What is science?
Technology.
Constant technology and research.
Yeah.
Constantly, right? What do you need to have research? Money. Right? So a nation that is impoverished cannot have
never have
world-class
good medicine.
healthcare. It can't.
Yeah, by definition.
It can't. So yes, you can go to the doctor for free or the hospital for free, but let's talk about that for a minute.
Lo que le van a dar es Neosporin.
So do they have like
EKG
CT scan?
Right.
Do they have an MRI? Do they have like, you know, like if you have like heart surgery, like you need a cardiologist?
What's the post care?
Right. No. Do you have cardiologists that have the infrastructure?
Well, because also Cuba is infamous for sending their doctors abroad.
Abroad, yes, that's true.
They have the doctors that they train them, then they're very well trained and they're very well educated, but they're in Spain, they're in Mexico, they're in Colombia, they're everywhere but Cuba.
Right. So it's one of those things that, again, and then you have somebody like Michael Moore. I mean, did you ever see Sicko?
No, because he's one of the ones that makes me want to punch him in the face.
You know, Michael Moore is one of these people that I was sort of team Michael Moore when he did Roger and Me.
Okay, fine.
Because I really believed in his argument about Roger and Me.
Right.
And when he did Bowling for Columbine, I thought he was spot on. But once he did Fahrenheit 9/11, I was like, the problem is that this is a documentary and it's totally skewed. And even if I agree with you, I don't want you to spoon feed me something. I want you.
And you know, all documentaries obviously have a point of view to begin with.
They do, but not so blatant.
Right.
You know, I don't want you to feed me things. I want you to present things that are thought provoking. Right. And in Seco, one of the first scenes in Seco, a él lo tiran in the middle of the ocean, like, I don't know, a few miles away from Cuba. I don't know how he got permission to do that. And a raft, so he could go to Cuba to get free healthcare. Right. So he probably went to like the one doctor's office in Cuba that is like presentable. Which, mind you, the doctor's offices and hospitals that are in better shape are the ones that are used by the government.
Yeah.
So they're not used for the Cuban
They're not
people.
in Carlos Roja.
Right. No. And they're used for the government and the people that work for the communist government.
Right.
So again, it's a total mischaracterization of what really goes on there, and it's just, and I'm sounding a lot like
your father,
my father, but these are the things that after a while you start seeing,
because none of it is untrue.
Like just like today or yesterday, because you know how there's rumors that they were cutting Wi-Fi.
Well, they did,
or internet from Cuba.
They did, yeah.
And I went to this webpage that I'm not going to say for, well, actually, no. It's my opinion what I'm about to say. Salon.com, which Salon.com tends to be more progressive. Right. And this is my opinion. Thoughts of opinion.
You mean like Vice?
Yes.
Progressive like Vice?
Yes. That they were talking about how people in Cuba have complete internet access, and that it's the U.S. that restricts their internet access. And
that's a fundamental lack of understanding of how internet works.
And I was like, wait, what? So if you read that article, it makes it sound like Cuba's internet woes are United States' fault.
How?
Because they were saying that this is their angle.
Yes.
That the government, the American government, is constantly putting out content and pages on how to overthrow the Cuban government. Okay. So the Cuban government has no choice than to block any internet or any pages that has anything having to do with American propaganda.
That is the biggest little bullshit I've ever heard in my fucking life.
Like, man, whoever. And then, of course, they have a source. Oh, because so-and-so from this research company says that, you know, and another thing.
Fuck you.
The picture that they used is of a girl on like a MacBook Pro. And I'm like,
where'd that bitch?
I'm like, este MacBook Pro se lo mandó la tía Sarita de Miami. Because we all know that Apple would put an Apple store in the North Pole if they could. If they could put one in Cuba, they would. Yeah. And they don't have one.
Right.
And I don't think Apple ships to...
I don't think they have Amazon drones.
I don't think they have 2-day Prime shipping.
No, they don't.
Havana.
No.
So I'm like, really? So even the picture is like...
Misleading.
Like...
Right.
And then, again, you read that, and you don't know anything from Cuba. You don't know any Cubans. And you're like, oh, well, you know.
But that's just a crock of shit.
It is.
I mean, essentially what you're saying is that because someone out there is putting information that you disagree with into the internet, which as we know is a world wide web, oh, I have no choice but to shut down access because I don't agree with what you're saying. So what you're saying actually is that, yes, they are an authoritarian government that is controlling the flow of information.
Right. But then, again, I go back to, like, being my
Like,
father.
like,
being
fuck
my
you.
father. Like, why this conspiracy? Unlike not denounce Cuba.
Right, because when they shut off internet to, I don't know, give me a country. I can't. There's like a million of them that have problems. Over in like by Sarajevo and Bosnia and all that.
Like for the Arab Spring.
Right. Yeah. So when that happens, nobody comes to the defense.
But exactly. So why
why do we bend over backwards?
Why is it that in general the American populace does not denounce Cuba and what they do? Like,
I just want to understand. I just want to know.
Mind-boggling. It's mind-boggling because I think the article even
are we just bad at our own PR?
That there's a little bit of censorship. Like they don't say it exactly like that, but from reading the article, they're like, well, yeah, there's a little bit of censorship. And it's no, you should be denouncing censorship.
It's not a little bit also.
Right? No, but from their kind of like approach, you're like, well, yeah, the Cuban government does block some internet,
right?
Just a little. It's like, no, like censorship.
If anywhere else, they'd be screaming bloody murder.
Exactly. So that, again, I'm sounding like the old Cuban man. Why the continued dismissal
of these harsh realities
of Cuba from media, from I'm less concerned about the government because the government's hands are tied.
They can only do so much. All they can do is denounce it and move on.
So back to what you said. What can we do? What can be done? Well,
what we've been doing.
I think that for number one, I think that the United States and the media here can take a hardline approach and a hardline position against Cuba and denounce it for what it is. It's a totalitarian communism. Don't say that it's a socialism, because when you say that it's a socialist country, most people
Canada's a socialist country.
Oh, like Europe, Norway, like Denmark, where the happy people are. Like,
is that what Denmark's known for? All the happiness?
Denmark, every time they do the World Index.
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that's right.
So is Denmark. It's always the Scandinavian countries.
It's because they have chocolate and French fries.
Yeah, and like Ricola and
so many wonderful things.
Yeah, and like pretty nature.
I'm getting happy just thinking about their happiness.
Pure air, pure air. Like,
no wonder they're happy. Okay.
Yeah,
who wouldn't be?
Oh my God, have you ever seen pictures of Flam, Norway?
Of what?
Flam, Flaam.
No.
Listeners, Google Flam, Norway, Flaam. It's gorgeous.
Isn't that the name of like own desk at Ikea?
I'm sure it is. I always laugh at Ikea. I always buy the lock.
The lock.
Lock is a little round table. I wonder how many locks I've bought throughout my life. And my bookshelves are all the Billy.
Yes, you have a lot of Billies and locks.
I have a lot of Billies and locks. You know that they're all waterways in Norway, in Sweden.
And I know that because you told me.
And I'm like, but how many waterways does...
Apparently, it has a lot of water for a landlocked country.
No, and like there's, I don't know, a million items at Ikea, because the thing is that even like the spoon
has a name, right?
Like, and then there's 20 different types of spoons. Like,
yeah. Why is there so much water in Sweden?
And then the you're having a little Ikea.
Yeah, okay. You know what? With that many waterways, we should send Jennifer Aniston.
Oh, she's so
she'd just be hydrated.
This is a little.
This is a break.
A little break from the Cuba talk. And all the stuff they discontinue, it's already used waterway names. So there's a lot of named waterways.
Okay, we're gonna get back to this in a later episode. We're gonna figure this out.
There's a lot of water.
There's a lot of water in Sweden.
In Sweden. But great things come from Sweden.
Meatballs,
Ikea, Volvo,
Ingmar Bergman.
Oh my God, I love the Ikea meatballs. Sometimes I go just to buy the meatballs.
What's the name of the sauce?
The lingonberry sauce.
Lingonberry sauce.
So delicious.
So really delicious. It's very delicious. You know who cannot have lingonberry sauce?
Who?
The Cuban people.
The Cuban people, and they can't go to Ikea.
Can't go to Ikea.
Yeah, there's an Ikea in the Dominican Republic.
Cubans want to build a Billy.
Yes, Cubans want to go.
They have things for shelves.
Yes, Cubans want to go to an oversized, showroom and see all these living rooms and run around.
And we know they want to do this because we see them doing this over here at Dolphin Mall.
Yes. Oh my God, it's kind of annoying at Dolphin Mall, and I understand it, but it's usually tourists that are buying a lot of stuff.
Con las maletas.
Oh my God, they walk around Dolphin Mall with suitcases,
Yeah.
and it's like, oh, excuse me while I go around your suitcases. Okay.
At least now they're on wheels.
Okay, let's leave our first world problems behind.
Right.
So back to what we could do or what can be done. Yeah, the U.S. needs to take a practical PR approach and constantly denounce Cuba, constantly, over and over and over again. The media.
This is one of the few times that you actually may agree with Marco Rubio.
Yes, and you know what? Marco Rubio's his speech.
Yes.
His speech, not his tweets. His speech this week was very compelling. I can't hate him for it. It was very compelling. I have my opinions about the man. I've made them very clear here throughout what is it, 165
episodes. Yeah.
But his speech was very compelling. I also think that the U.S. needs to take a bit of a Sun City approach.
What do you mean?
Do you know what this is? Some city?
No.
Okay. So
Was that a bank?
no. So remember how I tell you that the American populace doesn't care about what's going on in Cuba? Mm-hmm. So in the 1980s, apartheid was still a thing in South Africa.
Yes.
Okay.
That I know.
And there was a resort called Sun City. That was this beautiful resort that people would go and stay at.
Yeah. It was a resort. Yeah.
I forget the exact logistics of it, if who owned Sun City. I forget if it was European money, or I don't think it was American money, if it was European money or what have you. But the point is that in this resort, their staff was black, and obviously they couldn't mix with the white guests, and it was very much
It was apartheid.
Yeah, it was apartheid. So there was this huge worldwide campaign against denouncing companies that profited from apartheid. And the Sun City thing was so big that the guy, I forgot his name, that he's with Bruce Springsteen, but from the E Street Band, the guy que siempre tiene pañuelo en la cabeza.
The one from The Sopranos.
He was on The Sopranos?
Yeah, he was on The
I didn't watch
Sopranos.
The Sopranos,
Me
so.
neither, but I know he was on The Sopranos.
Okay.
Sí, él.
He even wrote a song
Oh,
about
really?
Sun City. Yes. And I think that is also a way of denouncing, Varadero is filled with all these fancy schmancy hotel chains.
Yeah,
Right?
Meliá is there.
Right. All these fancy chancy hotel chains that are profiting from tourism in a country that has no human rights.
Right.
Right? In a country where its own people can't stay at their hotel.
Yeah.
In a country where the only way a Cuban can access your hotel is by working there, but can't stay there, and their family can't have lunch there or dinner there, or probably even enter the premise. Right? So that is a way of calling out the corporate entities with no shame. You have absolutely no shame that you are an international corporation and you're making money out of a totalitarian from the people suffering in a totalitarian government. And I think that's also a way, because I remember pockets talk.
Money talks, baby.
Money talks. So, there's a lot of different things that could be done. Obviously, I do think that social media plays a role in it. Look, social media played a huge role in the Arab Spring.
Oh, yeah.
About 10 years ago.
Yeah.
It pretty much was because people started organizing on Facebook.
Yeah, that's the only way people were able to do it.
Yeah. So I just... There's just so much. But the point is that people in Cuba, and obviously this is very easily said as you and I sit in our very comfortable chairs
aquí en Coral Gables
in Miami. People in Cuba have to fight, and they can't give up. And
there's gonna be bloodshed.
Unfortunately,
There's gonna be hard times.
Unfortunately, and again, it's very easy for us to say what needs to be done when you're not the one living that.
Yeah.
But it's gonna come down to that. But I do think que la gente ahora no tiene miedo. I think that people
Do you
are,
think it's because of social media que no tienen miedo? Because they feel like people, as limited as it is,
it's
people...
a combination of things. I think it's social media. I think that they know that the world is seeing it. Because,
Right.
I mean, in the 80s and 90s, like, whoever saw anything about Cuba?
Other than Channel 7, News from Cuba.
Right. But even then, it
No,
wasn't
pero digo,
footage.
No. Yeah, it was reportaje.
Footage.
Yeah.
So, I mean, they say that there's things that the United States can do in terms of like Wi-Fi or like internet, not internet, but phone signals that they could amplify certain signals. I mean, if they could do that, I don't think that would hurt. So, I mean, I think those are the things the United States can do. I love all these Cubans que se están montando en banco para ir para
Okay, can we talk about them for a moment?
Yeah.
Can we talk about all these people who have just been sitting there waiting for the go? You know, look, I don't.
They're taking guns.
In a weird way.
Guns.
Okay, in a weird way, I respect it. But how are you going to get the guns onto the? We're going to put them in a big bottle, like a message in a bottle.
What they're trying to do is
they're trying to arm the people.
They're trying to arm the people because a lot of these people that are in Miami that are going in boats are like fishermen and things that they know the landscape and they know. I mean, think about it. I mean, if Cuba doesn't have like something like the American Coast Guard around.
There's got to be right.
There's like every few miles there's a boat.
There's got to be one little opening like the Death Star.
Right. That you could. I mean, there's people. I mean, you don't hear about it, but there's people who have gone to Cuba and during Maria, like during
sí, que han
any
ido y
other time,
regresado,
that have gone to Cuba and gone with their family in boats and back. Like you go to Bimini. Like you go to Elliott Key.
Yeah, that's true.
And I mean, think about it. If you know the landscape and you pull into like a little remote area and your family's,
escondido ahí,
and you go and get them. And
I just.
But the problem is that even with that, first of all,
they're making a bad situation worse.
International, I'm sure
it's international incident.
International law that makes it illegal. But then also that changes the narrative to say that the U.S. is involved and the U.S. is arming the Cuban people.
See, that's my problem. I just feel
the thing is like how many guns or weapons are you really going to transport?
Right. There's only so much you can carry on a boat.
Especially now that the Venezuelan military has arrived in Cuba.
Okay, I heard that, but is it true?
Yeah, well, there's pictures going online about
sí,
it.
pero nowadays pictures...
but it would make sense.
No. It wouldn't surprise me, but what I'm saying is, you know how it is nowadays. And that's another thing. There's a lot of gossip and misinformation going out there around too, guys. So... I know we say this a lot. Check your sources. Do your research. Don't always take everything at face value because a big part of it is also that emotions are running really high.
Yesterday I was at my parents' house. My dad was watching some guy. It wasn't Otaola. If it was Otaola, I'd be like, "You're not playing that man while I'm in this house." Like,
change the channel.
Right. It was somebody else, but has a similar style, and he was like there on a live YouTube or Facebook feed that he was like, tenemos información que Raúl Castro se ha ido de Cuba.
Wait, he went to Venezuela? No?
I haven't heard he had. I heard he woke up from retirement to go meet with the government.
Oh, I heard that he had gone to Venezuela.
Right.
But then yeah.
And I'm like telling my dad was like, really? Yeah. And pigs fly. Like my dad is like, it's mentira, but it is what it is.
I don't know. It
is what it is. And one final thing, which ties into, the people who have follow us on Instagram. I posted yesterday or a few days ago this video where I talked about my thoughts about what's going on in Cuba. Let's talk a minute about the embargo because I feel that's kind
address
of
the elephant in the room, sort of
guinea pig or elephant in the room pertaining to all that. We can have a conversation as to the effectiveness of the embargo. Personally, I think it's.
I don't think it's been effective. It's been around for 60 years.
I think it's an outdated and archaic piece of policy.
Why would we have an embargo with Cuba and say not China?
That's a very good question.
Or other communist countries.
With Cuba, it was like. Remember that also during the revolution, the Castro, Fidel seized a lot of American companies
Okay.
and a lot of American property.
Okay.
One of them being the Havana Hilton.
Yeah.
That's famous. Like the Hilton, like a year or two earlier, had done like this beautiful property in Havana, and they seized it. So it was in part in retaliation for the assets that they had seized. And remember that when the whole thing in Cuba happened, everybody thought it was temporary.
True.
How many Cubans came here with a ticket to go back?
Yeah.
When you go to the Freedom Tower, which is the Cuban museum, you see all the people, you see like the tickets of Pan Am of people, like it wasn't a one-way trip. It was like a round trip because they thought that eso iba a durar poco, unos meses,
Yeah.
whatever. Gloria Estefan being one of them. Gloria Estefan has like said on how like her parents.
This
were
was
like,
temporary.
Oh, this is temporary. Like we're going to be back home and no, in a jiffy.
I wish not. You said the Freedom Tower. Quick, have you seen the Tomorrow War on Amazon Prime?
No.
So when
I'm too busy setting myself up for failure, watching Manifest.
Well, there's the scene. Well, when he first goes into the future where the aliens have attacked or whatever, he lands in Miami, and they destroy the Freedom Tower, and it made me very sad.
Well, you know what? In all fairness, I mean, look, if I lived in LA, I would be tired that the U.S. Bank building
keeps
the one
getting blown up.
getting blown up in Independence Day.
That's true.
And let's not even talk about the
Empire State Building,
Empire
the
State
Statue of
Building.
Liberty.
So you know, I guess.
But
I guess we made it into the club.
But on a good part, they got
Oh,
they
no.
got rid of Brickell.
Oh no! But I lived literally right next door.
Oh no, you were gone.
I was gone. I
Oh
didn't even
no.
see it.
Oh no. Your building, by the way, yeah, I think
Marina Blue was gone.
I think I can make it out before they even blew up the Freedom Tower. Like estaba todo hecho una mierda.
No.
Yeah.
Anyway,
It doesn't
what show is this?
It's a movie, The Tomorrow War.
Okay, I gotta at least see that scene. Where were we?
We
Oh,
were
the
sorry,
embargo.
the embargo. Yeah.
So, the embargo, as I said, well, not me saying it's the embargo. It doesn't prohibit trade with other countries, and it doesn't prohibit trade within the U.S. and Cuba for food and medical aid and medical supplies. But Cuba has obviously unilaterally always declined it to fulfill their narrative.
Right.
That the reason things are in Cuba
Are horrible. It's because of the big bad imperialist.
The embargo. Yeah. El Imperio Americano, as they call it, los Yankees. And again, while I'm no fan of the embargo, and I think it's bad policy at this moment. Maybe at one time it was good policy, but at this time it's bad policy.
Well, it hasn't done. I mean,
It hasn't done what it was supposed to
intention
do.
has not been fulfilled.
Right?
60 years in. So
You can't blame the embargo on the situation of Cuba. You just can't.
the embargo is not preventing people from protesting.
Right.
The embargo is not flying in people from Venezuela to attack.
The embargo
is not rounding up children to serve in the military.
Right. The embargo is not killing you because you have a difference of opinion of the government. The embargo does not prohibit you the right to bear arms like in the United States, let's say. The embargo does not stop there from being freedom of the press. The press in Cuba. There's no freedom of press in Cuba. There's one newspaper, Granma. Right? The embargo doesn't stop all of that. You know what stops all of that? The fact that it's a fucking totalitarian, communist country. Right. That's what it does. Right. And most importantly, which is the point that I made in my video, is that everybody talks about the embargo and everybody talks about people that are non-believers, people about the embargo, and everybody talks about the U.S. policy and blah, blah, blah. U.S. tries to meddle in
the world affairs. Yeah.
Right. But what they always leave out of that argument is the fact that in Cuba, there have not been free elections in 62 years. Let's say that again. In Cuba, there have not been free and fair elections in 62 years.
But
Should we say it a third time?
Let's.
In Cuba, there have not been free and fair elections in more than 62 years.
Yes.
If that
the rule of three, you have to hear something three times.
That is not a red flag.
But what are you talking about, Darian? They have elections all the time in Cuba. They have all these elections.
Not a red flag. As to everything else that's wrong with Cuba, then I don't know what to tell you.
I can't have a conversation with you.
I can't. Because if you don't find that odd, if you don't find that that's just...
No, Darian, pero they have elections. They have elections, Darian. You see them voting. Right. You see them lining up.
And this goes to like the whole thing of like again, the argument that I make in the video that I posted on our webpage, that on our Instagram, that when people are talking about their lived experience, you have to listen to them. Because what do some people say? But the people of Cuba they're communists. They love the government because you see them in the Plaza Revolucion screaming, Fidel, Fidel. And it's like, right, because it is well known, and anybody who lived in Cuba will tell you, is that they go down the street in the truck, they round you up, and they're like, guess what?
Today we're going to the
Plaza
park.
Revolucion.
Yeah.
There are no ifs and buts about it. We're going.
I don't know where you were going,
discussion.
but here's where you're going
And
now.
you have to go, and this is what you have to do.
Right.
Right? And yet, thousands and thousands and tens of thousands of people testify to the fact that they've done that and they were forced to do that. But yet you have these people out here like, oh, but they're there.
No, but you're wrong.
You're wrong.
But you're wrong.
You're wrong. My Wikipedia knowledge and my blog knowledge trumps your lived experience.
Right.
Right? Because that's really what they're doing.
Right.
That's really what they're doing. And it's just so frustrating. It's so frustrating. It's just, again, because I always approach it.
What I find interesting about that, and I'm sorry to interrupt you, but what I find interesting about that is the people who will make that argument are the same people who will tell you that you have to listen to trans lives, you have to listen to black lives, you have to listen to. It's interesting to me that the more progressive, quote unquote, voices are the ones who are.
Hey, I'm a progressive.
Who are doing no, but you know what I mean. Are doing the mental gymnastics to make themselves, no. But listen, you're wrong.
You could be all mad all that you want at the U.S. The U.S.
has all the problems that it has.
We have a lot of problems.
We're not perfect.
We've messed up in a lot of things. We have a very hard history, a very unfair history to a lot of people. You could say all that you want about the U.S.
And you're probably right.
The problems in Cuba are not because of the U.S. And to think that it's a very, not trivial, it's just incorrect.
Just ignorant.
Assessment.
It's willful ignorance.
It's willful ignorance of what's going on in Cuba, what's been going on in Cuba for 60-some years. And then, this argument about, Roberto Batista. No, that was 62 years ago. Just say it. No, it doesn't even matter what Fidel replaced. Right. Or what he promised, or who liked him and who didn't. It's the point that once he took over,
he sold a bill of goods, and then he was something
a prick, and he was a communist. There's a very famous quote of him. We should find it where he denounces communism.
I know the one you're talking about.
I'll find it. He denounces communism because that is the facade that he had to trick an entire country. Right? But that's why I also tell you, which isn't just.
Little segue.
I would never trust anybody that started a coup, because when you start a coup,
it's because you think you know better.
Well,
and you want power.
You're going against the Constitution of whatever country, right. And once you start going against the Constitution, that's when things start getting tricky because everybody thinks they're right until they're wrong. Right.
Yeah.
So
I very rarely trust anybody who thinks that they have all the answers.
Right. So, después one day Cuba's going to be liberated, or communism is going to fall.
Do you think it'll happen within our lifetime? And it's weird to say that.
So here's the thing,
because we're not old, but
when Díaz Canale took power, I actually thought.
I'm sorry. I have to say, I love the fact that when I went to Versailles the other day, literally all the signs for it was Díaz Canale un cingao. That was it. That's the mantra. That's the hashtag right there. Our people love to be vulgar.
I actually thought that he was going to do more of the China model.
Okay.
To have a
hybrid,
market, a capitalist economy, a free market, but still be a communist country, which kind of means that,
you can open up a business if you want.
Right. You have to stay in your lane.
Right.
Stay in your lane, and you can't say anything. But at least you're not starving and your house is falling on you. And
right. You can have your own business. You can do your
all
own
those things. Right. Which, standing as an American, I'm like, fuck that. No, I want freedom.
Right.
I feel that this is an all or nothing thing.
Right.
But I think that also being there, it's like,
okay, baby steps.
It's like, okay, but that's better than what we have now. Right. I actually thought, a lot of people thought that was probably the way that he was going to go. Mm-hmm. But
homeboy doubled down.
He hasn't. So
He's been in power now for what, like 2 years?
something like that. And even China like advised them to go that route.
Oh,
You
really?
know? Yeah. Because, a country like China, there's what, 1 billion people in China? You got to keep those people happy somehow.
That's true.
Because that's an insurrection you do not want. Like, because it doesn't matter how big your military is or your police force is.
There's 1 billion
It's
people.
like I don't know, what is it? 1/4 of the world population lives in China. So you don't want those people to be pissed off, like or pissed off to the point that they're going to overthrow the
Right,
government.
because they've got the numbers.
Right.
The numbers are on their side.
So we'll see. So que viva Cuba libre,
Yeah.
and después after. Then the fight's going to be of like, who's going to rule Cuba? Because then the ones here.
All want to go back and reclaim.
Right. And be like, but this is my Cuba. And it's like, no, you haven't lived here. And like, I was telling that to my father the other day. I'm like, you people haven't lived in Cuba in over 40 years, like 42 years now.
That's not
like,
your country
you don't
anymore.
know what it's like to live in Cuba because you lived through a very, my parents, like, maybe,
Yeah.
well, your parents know, but a lot of people in my parents' age, like in their 60s and 70s, and older,
if
lived
it
through a
came.
very hard time because they lived through the transition. They lived in the time that they had some stuff, then they lost it, and then it was the first years of the regime. So they were really putting their foot down and executing people and all that. So they lived through a particularly hard time. But they haven't lived there like them. A lot of people haven't lived there in 40, 50, 60 years. Yeah. So you don't know what it's like to live in Cuba. Like,
it's not your country anymore. It sounds harsh to say, but
you don't know the realities of living there day by day.
You can't just show up there and...
Yeah. So.
Oh, yeah, just starting from infrastructure.
Right. But you know what? That's a good problem to have down the road. So, que viva Cuba libre. So,
yes, sir.
I actually want to talk really quick about one more thing. This is non-Cuba related.
Then we're not going to do it. Sorry. This is the Cuba episode. Sorry.
No, because this is, well, the Cuba topic is timely, but this is also timely.
Okay.
You probably heard this week before the Cuba uprising that Richard Branson went to space.
Oh, yeah, that's right.
How do you feel about that?
I mean, why not?
I have so many issues with it.
I'm just upset that everybody but Lance Bass has gone into space.
I have so many issues with it.
Why?
Because Jeff Bezos is also going to space, and it's like, I think it's like a who has a bigger dick contest.
Let them.
No. Well, they could do whatever they want. They could do whatever they want. If they want to go to space, let them go to space. If they want to go to Mars, let them go to Mars. But it's just, I'm very big on space exploration.
Right.
When it's done by NASA or some type of, scientific entity.
Right.
But this is to like make it
Well, it's
cool.
it's space tourism.
Right, for the filthy rich.
Yeah. It doesn't bother me because the filthy rich have always done things that I can't do. Why should space be any different?
I guess you're right, but it's like, really, Richard Branson? Like, there's so many other things that you could have done with that money. Like,
fair enough, but I mean, Richard Branson has also done so many things. Like, he's jumped off hot air balloons and shit. The only thing left was space.
I just think that it's like, it's like who has a bigger dick club?
Oh, no. It is definitely a dick measuring contest. Yeah.
It's like, you're going to space. Well, you know what? I'm going to space.
And I'm surprised that Elon Musk hasn't just created a black
I'm
hole.
going to space, and I'm going quicker and faster.
Right. No. It's totally a dick measuring contest.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
You're flying like 10 G's. I'm going to fly 20 G's.
Yeah.
Like,
I don't know. It doesn't bother me. Maybe it's just because I have a soft spot in my heart for Virgin Records.
well, so do I. Not going to lie. So do I. But I don't know. Like, I think it's so, I don't know. I don't see the bigger picture in it. And generally, I do see the big picture in it. I think it's just something very frivolous, and it's just.
Oh, it absolutely is.
He's
doing it because he can.
Hi, I'm rich. I'm filthy rich. I'm
And I'm going to go to space.
I'm going to do whatever the hell I want. I'm going to space. Stop me. And it's like, I don't know. There's so many problems like in Cuba that you could bring awareness to.
That's true. He could take that money and I don't know.
And Jeff Bezos is part Cuban.
Well, actually, he does recognize himself as Cuban because his father, his adoptive father, is Pedro Pan.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, he's a Pedro.
Oh, he's adopted?
Yeah, so his mother had him with with his biological father. They got divorced when he was like maybe a year, like super young, and then when his mother remarried to this Bezos guy, he adopted Jeff. And really that's the only father he's ever known. So that is his father. I mean, for all intents and purposes.
Jeff. Who is going to see that coming?
Listen.
You know what I think
Why
is
not?
great?
Cuban ingenuity, baby.
to end it up with. So on Amazon, I've been on Amazon a very long time.
Okay.
I've been on Amazon since it's 1998.
Really? It's been around that long?
Yes. So remember in 1991, in 1999, I was 2.
Two, that's right.
1998, I was 1.
That's true.
Do you know what's the very
Those
first,
onesies were getting to your house?
You can look on your account and see all your entire
history
of what you bought. Do you know what's the very first thing I bought on Amazon in 1998?
Why do I feel like it's an import single?
Of course it is. It's not a single, it's a whole album.
Is it something of Robbie's?
Of course.
Okay, wait. No, don't tell me now. Is it I've Been Expecting You?
Of course it is. Because Millennium had come out.
That's right.
And I'm like, I really like that song, and I couldn't find it in the import section of Blockbuster Music when I was a year old.
Yes.
And the Boss Baby. And I remember I found it in this weird page called Amazon.
Wow.
And I'm like, okay, well, I'm gonna order it. And well, we're not gonna say this on air.
And thus was born an obsession.
Do you remember my password back in the day? Don't say it, obviously.
Oh, I just did.
Okay, that is still my password.
Are you serious?
Yes, it is. That is still my password.
So wait a minute. I don't need to buy Amazon Prime. I can just log in with yours.
Yeah, okay. And it has still.
But I didn't even have to ask you. I
It's
could
still my, or you know what dates me? When I give people my general email, because nowadays we all have emails for different things. When I give people my general email, and it's an AOL address.
Mine is Hotmail.
Yeah, it's an AOL address.
Yeah.
People are like, AOL. Like, I'm sure if there's an 18-year-old filling out whatever.
They have no idea.
They have no idea what AOL is.
They're like, what's an owl?
And I'm like, yes, it's AOL. Back when it was the shit.
That's right.
Those chat rooms. And I'll be like, estoy hablando con alguien en España. And I'll be like, mamá, papá, mira, estoy hablando con alguien en Madrid. Ay, oh my God, estás hablando con alguien en España. Wow. And it's like, now it's like,
yeah, I'm talking to somebody in Spain.
who cares? I don't care that you're talking to someone.
Whatever. Now we have to go to space.
But yeah, see, only somebody who's known me for 30 plus years. You got it to the T.
I was like, okay, wait. I need to back up and back up and back up.
This is why we host a podcast together.
This is exactly why we host a
podcast. He could
podcast.
figure out my first Amazon purchase.
Listen, don't forget that I was able to purchase episodes of American Horror Story. Actually, I think it was through Amazon.
Oh my gosh! So listeners, to kind of lighten up
before we get into our last sodas,
to kind of lighten up the
mood.
subject, the mood. I remember some years ago, it was on Amazon Prime.
It had to have been because
On Amazon Prime,
Yeah.
I started seeing all these purchases of American Horror Story, and I'm like, "Pero quién está viendo
episode
esto?"
2, episode 3, episode
Like,
4,
who is
episode
watching? Like who took my thing? And I don't know how. Like, I think I called you.
or I may have called you somehow.
Or I'm like, hey, have you been purchasing American Horror Story with my Amazon? And you're like, yeah, I have. And I'm like, but there's like a PIN number that you have to put and he's like, yeah, and I figured it out. And I'm like, okay, it's like what, 6 digits?
It was
I'm
5.
Like, it was 5 digits.
It was 5
and
digits.
let's just say that it wasn't my birthday, right?
And I got it right on the first try.
Yes. And he got it right, and it wasn't even my, because if it's your birthday, like, okay, well, that's
right.
It wasn't even my birthday, and you got it right, and I'm like, okay, wow.
Yep.
Like,
Yes, sir.
we got stars, people. If you haven't heard Robbie Williams, we gotta laugh. It's been a rough week, and I just know, for those of you who know that Robbie Williams I was Robbie Williams' first American fan.
It's true.
And when we went to see him in Vegas 2 years ago, I sure let him know that I was.
I feel he heard you. I feel he knew. He knew. He couldn't say anything, but
enough.
he knew.
We're getting on a tangent here, personal stuff. So, well, I know who I'm going to give my last soda to. I'm going to give it to the Cuban people. First of all, they need all the soda they can get, all the refreshment
they can get,
replenishment they can get.
Yeah, a revolution is very thirst quenching.
Yes. So the Cuban people standing up for your freedom and fighting for your freedom, this soda is for you.
Yes, absolutely. So I'm gonna go a similar route. I'm actually gonna give it to someone who she's a model, for lack of a better word, an influencer on Instagram. America Valdez.
Oh, yes.
She is the daughter of Cuban comedian Alexis Valdez. And earlier this week, she gave a really succinct, beautiful explanation on her Instagram, and maybe we'll post it, of what it is to listen to. Basically, it's what you did, Darian, which is you got to listen to people who know what they're talking about and don't deny their experiences. But she did it in such a succinct way. And I mean, I think she's maybe 21 at most, and she was just so eloquent and well spoken. And it was just, I don't know. There was something about when I heard her speak that just it hit me in the feels, and it made me just really,
you know what?
it resonated with me.
A voice like hers is important because as young as we think we are, again, I was
two in
right.
1999.
That would make me, 24?
Right. Well, she's still younger than you. Yes.
Right.
Yes. Clearly.
You need.
You're right. You
legal
like ours. You legal prodigy. You
need young voices like us. No, seriously. You need like really young voices like her to talk to her peers and tell them, hey, this is what's up. Because you know how it is. When you're under 25, you think that somebody who's 28 is old.
Yeah, exactly.
And old and archaic, and they're,
what you know what you're talking about.
Right.
Yeah.
So a lot of times these people that are very young and really stand for something and believe in something, those voices are very important because that's how you reach.
That's where the impact is made.
Yeah.
That absolutely. So the Cuban people and America Valdez.
Yeah. So, well, everybody, that was a
jam-packed episode.
Yeah, that ended up talking. We talked about Cuba for almost an hour, and then we talked about two British guys, Robbie Williams and Sir Richard Branson.
As one does. As one does.
So, everybody, we hope you listen, laughed, and learned. Next week, I believe we're going to be having sort of a special episode.
We're going to be recording on location.
We'll fill you in what it is. But we're going to have a little bit of a special episode in terms of the subject matter. I mean, we're obviously talk about things going on and all that. Although if Cuba's liberated by next week, forget it.
Yeah, I mean, all bets are off. Yeah, exactly.
We'll be on location, whatever. So, everybody, we hope you listened, laughed, and learned. Remember to grab your pastelito, your croqueta, and your cafecito. And thank you so much for joining us. That was episode 165. Have a great weekend, everybody. Pero Friday, have a great one.
And you know what? And have a Cuba Libre.
Yes. That Gloria Estefan song. Quiero mi Cuba Libre.
Or as they say, una mentirita.
That's what they call it?
Well, yeah, because Cuba's not free.
Yeah.
Pero Let Me Tell You is co-hosted by Darian Borges and Ismaeliano, produced by Ismaeliano, and our theme, Pero Let Me Tell You Freestyle, is composed by Michael Angelo Lomlaplex, the official gay guy. And don't forget to subscribe and leave us a review on iTunes.